They have a prosthetic for a lost arm. They have a prosthetic for a lost eye, lost foot. But there is no prosthetic for a lost spirit or a lost soul. Am I right?
We just came together in the name of justice. You know, we say with liberty and justice for all, we put our hand over our heart, but that's not always the truth. We just want liberty and justice for all.
We cannot go another day and watch the killing of an innocent black man or black woman due to an unjust system.
We're at a time in this country that we gotta listen to each other.
Keep your spirit, keep your hope. I don't care if you black, white, have stripes like a zebra. You keep the hope because y'all gonna change this world.
We need to listen. John Dingle said to me long ago, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
We have to get involved. Go to those city council meetings. Go to your commissioner meetings. Reach out to your Congress and your Senate.
You have to vote for people that stand for you, your initiatives, your value, your goals, what you want to see achieved in your township, your city. And then you have to hold those people accountable.
Things need to change. The system needs to change. I urge everyone here to keep fighting and to keep marching to the voting booth in August and November.
Y'all ready to march? Y'all ready to march? All right, I'm ready to march.
Get your foot off of me! Get your foot off of me! No racism! Police! No justice! No racism!
We have to learn how to love each other. We have to learn how to support each other. And we have people that'll say, all lives matter. Well, we already know all lives matter. But all lives won't matter until all lives won't matter until all lives won't matter until that's right.
Remember, we are one community. One. We're going to fight this in the way that Dr. King taught us to. But it's time. It's time to end this bull. It's time for equality for all.
What's happening, everybody? You are tuned into the Real Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, 107.5 HD2 if you're in the Detroit area. And if you're watching us on the website on radiowecansee.com, Facebook, and if you don't see the little live button up in the corner, that means you'll be catching a replay later. That video was entitled Liberty and Justice for All. And you've seen me out with the Black Lives Matter movement and really standing proudly for injustice and fighting injustice. Over the weekend, one of the Black Lives Matter murals was desecrated in Ypsilanti. And the word was black was scratched out and it was spray painted all with white paint. So it could say all lives matter. But that's not true. All lives in the United States does not matter. Indigenous people's lives never mattered. Black lives don't matter. and trans lives don't matter. So that's what we're going to talk about today, because see, we want to be so critical and quick to criticize somebody that's transitioning because they feel like they are not living in a body that they're comfortable with. The transition is not what's going on with their body. It's what needs to go on in your mind for telling somebody how you feel. They think you think they should live. Not your business at all. But a lot of times we push back against things because we don't have the proper education. We don't understand what's going on. So that's what this show is about, a little bit of education, get some personal experiences, some testimonies, some facts. You may or may not change your mind about how you feel about members of the trans community, and that's up to you. But then I can clearly call you ignorant because I gave you the education, right? So we're going to jump right on into it and watch this video that's going to take us through the history of LGBTQ. Let's roll the clip.
Hi there.
Who, me?
Yeah, you seem like an average guy.
Well, I love smoothies and drive a Prius, if that's what you mean.
Exactly. Quick question. Have you ever thought how your life might be different if you were gay?
Not really. I guess it would be a little harder. Wait, was that homophobic? Oh God, I'm really sorry.
This is a safe space, Carl.
My name is Mark.
Whatever. You're right, though. Being gay has its challenges, but it hasn't always been like this.
Like the Greeks?
Absolutely. The earliest evidence of gay relationships is from ancient Greece, although that was mostly about older and younger men. Did you know Socrates was in the closet?
I didn't. I also didn't know they had closets back then. When did all the crazy homophobia start?
Homophobia seemed to start in the church during the High Middle Ages.
Whoa.
And in the Renaissance, it got even worse.
What happened?
Well, if you were outed, let's just say it would have been bad.
Ah!
There were still plenty of brave people who revolted. On August 31st, 1512, a group of young aristocrats living in Florence staged what many consider history's first gay rights demonstration. But that didn't stop homophobia from migrating to colonial America. In 1776, being gay in any of the Puritan colonies was not allowed.
Jeez. So when did things start to change for the better?
It wasn't until the 20th century that we started to see progress. Gay bars were popping up in major cities, but were frequently raided by the police because being gay was still illegal in every state except Illinois.
Go Bears!
Exactly. One of these bars was the popular Stonewall Inn in New York City. On the morning of June 28, 1969, which also happened to be the day of Judy Garland's funeral, the patrons of the Stonewall Inn decided they weren't going to take it.
Hell yeah!
A black transgender woman named Marsha P. Johnson is credited with leading the uprising that started the modern gay rights movement and putting the T in LGBT. Now, every November, the T's and their supporters recognize Transgender Awareness Week.
This is great. It seems like things were going pretty well.
For a while.
A while? What happened next?
Well, in the early 80s, the world was hit by the AIDS epidemic, and the gay community was hit hardest. AIDS became known as a gay disease. In fact, it was originally called GRID, which means gay-related immune deficiency.
No way.
It's true. Many people think that the government didn't act quickly enough because it was considered a gay disease. So the LGBTQ community had to fight it themselves.
So how did they fight it?
They got organized. Activist groups like ACT UP, the Gay Men's Health Crisis, Lesbian AIDS Project, and the Names Project emerged and refused to be ignored. This newly empowered gay community had one goal.
What was that?
To come out. They thought the problem with homophobia was that people didn't know other people who were gay. And if more people came out, they would be seen for who they are and not just as a stereotype. Convincing people to come out was still a tough task, but things got easier in 1997 when Ellen appeared on the cover of Time magazine and told the world, "Yep, I'm gay." After that, more and more gay people started appearing in TV and movies. helping millions feel more confident to love who they want.
Wow, what a journey. I'm kind of digging myself as a gay person.
Slow down. We're not done just yet.
Well, we've come so far. Can we just celebrate for a minute?
No time for that, Carl. We still have a lot of laws to change.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Being gay was more accepted, but there were still a lot of rights that gay people didn't have. However, they did have something they didn't have before.
What?
Allies. Yeah, in 2003, Massachusetts became the first state to legalize marriage equality. And 12 years later, it was legal in all 50 states, much in thanks to a majority of Americans who supported it. So as a gay person living in 2019, how would you feel?
Pretty happy I live in the present, grateful for all the heroes who fought before me, and hopeful for the future.
I'm glad, because the fight for equality is still going. It takes a village, and we're going to need your help.
All right. So we're going to get into this. As I said, all lives don't matter until trans lives matter. So I have my guest on the show who is transitioning, and I also have my social worker from the agency on the show. So first, I want to introduce Jacqueline. Say hello to everyone, Jacqueline.
Hello.
And now, the guest of the honor, who I had such a pleasure getting to know and talking to over the weekend, none other than Skylar. Say hello to everyone, Skylar.
Hello, everyone. I am Skylar Hawthorne, she, her, and I'm so happy to be here today.
I'm excited to have you. So we're just going to get into it. What was your life like as a child?
I think I had a fairly standard upbringing for the most part. Nuclear family. Yeah, there were definitely signs of gender dysphoria as a kid. You know, kids tend to believe more often in magic, and the number one thing I've wished for in my life was to wake up the next day as a girl. But also, you know, kids at a very young age, we learn to adhere to norms. We have intrinsic norm adherence mechanisms that kick in early. And so I learned to inhibit those feelings. I remember in preschool, a girl asked me if I wanted to do ballet with her. And of course, I would have loved to do ballet with her. However, also, of course, I was like, no, I'm a man. I'm going to do karate instead. And so I stayed in the closet for years afterwards. That was like my deepest, darkest secret for so long. I overcompensated. I cultivated a convincing masculine facade. I played football. I played lacrosse. I hated it, and yet I did it. I tried so hard to be the man that I thought I should be, and it made me miserable. I remember in high school, I went to rehab, and then in college, I finally started to accept that I am a transgender woman. I first started HRT at the age of 18. After just a month, I was like, you know what, I can't do this, and went back in the closet. HRT is hormone replacement therapy. For me as a trans woman is estrogen and an anti-testosterone and progesterone. Sometimes, not always, I take it. And then my junior year of college, I actually transferred to Boston University, a big city where I was an absolute no one. I had no reputation to uphold, and that finally gave me the courage and the confidence to start my transition at the age of 21. Here I am 5 years later at the age of 26, fully transitioned, had the bottom surgery, and I'm doing so much better now.
Wow. Thank you, first of all, for being here. It is not an easy subject to talk about because it's not accepted by all. So that's number one. I don't take this lightly. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being very transparent. Because on the Real Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, I come strong, black, and unfiltered, and so I'm glad that you are being transparent. And anyone that is viewing or listening to the show and you disagree with any of the things that Skylar will be sharing or saying, keep it to yourself. This is not the time or the place to bestow any of your religious norms. Religiosity is not welcome here today, because then I have to get you together and say God loved everybody and you sinning by judging. So you ain't going to meet us in hell. You're going to beat us to hell. So we're not going to even do that. So I'm just going to say that disclaimer several times throughout, because that is not going to be tolerated. This is a safe space for Skylar to share, and that's what's going to happen. Okay? Okay. So now that I got that out of the way, you talked about when you discovered that you were kind of trapped. And so as a result of that, did you suffer any anxiety or depression or anything like that?
Absolutely. Almost every single mental health diagnosis is comorbid with gender dysphoria, according to the DSM. So trans people experience higher rates of depression, anxiety, substance use, borderline personality disorder, and more. And personally, I experienced several of those mental health issues myself. What's really remarkable is that we see with transition, those rates decrease. So overall, about 40% of trans people attempt suicide. But for trans people who are able to transition, get the help they need, after about 2 years when they are able to start living their life according to their true gender identity. For me, as a woman, we see that suicide rate plummet from about 40% to 4.5%. That's the rate of the general population. On average, across the country, the average suicide attempt rate is 4.5%.
Wow. So Jacqueline, as a social worker, and you hear Skylar talking about all of those mental health conditions, how do you feel about that?
It breaks my heart. I mean, as any social worker out there, any type of mental health professional out there, we don't want to continue to see our mental health increasing across demographics and across geographical regions, but it is, and unfortunately it's something that we need to address. And by having these stigmatizations and these beliefs or certain hate crimes, it is increasing the individual's mental health issues, and we need more social workers out there, more mental health professionals to help individuals and everyone to be accepting and loving to everyone around, no matter what's going on in their lives.
Yes, we need the right type of social workers, because there's a lot of people that carry the title but don't have the compassion. There are a lot of people who have theory and try to put that theory into practice. That doesn't work when you're dealing with people's lives. You really need some experience and some boots on the ground. I get it. You went to this university and they're going to tell you all of these terms. And Skylar, you're a social worker as well, right?
I am.
So they teach you all of these things to say. Some of them can apply to certain situations, but at the end of the day, you have to have a heart and compassion for the individuals that you're dealing with. And for some reason, you have all of that and that burning desire in school, but then when you get in corporate America and they have their norms and systemic racism and all of these other things kick in, you're not going to be able to say and do what you want to do, even if you feel it's right, even if you feel it's best, because if you go against the norm, you're looked at as a problem, even though you're trying to present a solution to a problem. And so that's the problem that I have, not just with the social work field, but just many, many different areas of corporate America. It just doesn't work well when you don't fit inside of the box. And I can speak from experience being Black and female, and I was a scientist. Knowing that I was hired because I was Black and because I was female, that's a double spin count, because they're like, okay, you know, we need more minorities in this field and we need more women. So here I come along. I'm educated though, right? And I knew the job and I could do the job well. The people who I worked with that hired me weren't inclusive, and human resources is not inclusive. Human resources is for the company, not for the employee. So there are a lot of things that happen that definitely don't fit, which brings me to the next question. Skylar, tell me how gender identity has impacted cultural norms in your opinion.
There is so much that could be said about this, because gender identity cuts to the core of everyone's identity. So, as most everyone knows, there's this gender binary that we see in society that is widely considered a social construct. It's all these norms that people assign to gender identities, regardless of whether or not, like, those are actually true. So, like, one example of the gender binary is that men are expected to be the providers. Women are expected to be the caretakers. You know, this goes all the way back to the divide between hunters and gatherers. And this can be a really dangerous notion because not everyone intrinsically adheres to the gender binary. And those can be really harmful norms because they compel people to be a way that goes against who they actually are. Mm-hmm. You know, go way back when, imagine a woman who was born to be a hunter and who really wanted to be a hunter. Well, given that gender binary norm, she probably would have been forced to become a gatherer. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of courage to rebel against these norms, but it's always worth doing so.
Yes, power to the people. Fist up for that, because I have fought and fought and fought against systems and things of that nature. And it seems like every area, whether it's education, whether it is law, right? Get your knee off my neck. Break the school to prison pipeline. But now healthcare. Healthcare has become a part of that equation, and I experienced it with my mom. So when we're talking about that, it reminds me of the term when they say, well, first it was Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. When we got past what was supposed to be a law that broke up Jim Crow and segregation. Never happened. Then we moved to the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, where nope, everybody's going to have equal rights and everybody's going to be treated the same. Didn't work. So they were like, okay, well, we won't use that term. We're going to say diversity. So now we want diversity, and we want a mixture of individuals represented of the culture that is in the United States, especially Ann Arbor, because it is a melting pot. And it was like one of the worst. That's where I worked, in Ann Arbor. So it's like, no, that's not true. So now they figured out, okay, well, since we don't want to do all of these other things, we'll just add a word to it. So now it's diversity and inclusion. But you still do not have inclusion if the people who you are representing in the educational system, within law enforcement or the judicial system or healthcare, don't feel like they belong. There is no inclusion in that. Just as Skylar said, I did not feel like I belong in my body. Well, if we look at that systemically and we look at a corporation as a body of people, it's similar to a body. You have all of these different components that are supposed to function very well together as one. People need to feel like they belong, and they don't. So that is a problem. I am totally fine allowing anyone to live their life the way that they want to, because no one's going to come to my house and tell me how to live, what I should and should not be doing, how I should do it, how I should dress, or any of that. And then if you want to be aggressive and think that you're going to do something to me, that's going to be real interesting, because I'll get the banging on you. So None of that's going to work for me. But I'm going to tell you where I mess up. Those darn acronyms. Now, I was fine when we were talking about just being gay, you know, back in late 70s, early 80s when I was in high school. It wasn't a lot to remember. But then we got the LGBTQ. Then it was the plus that added additional letters. And sometimes I mess up. So I'm going to ask Marquise to roll this clip so that we can get a little education on acronyms, words explained. Roll that clip for me, please.
Acronyms and words. Everybody sees them, not everyone knows what they mean. For example, what does this acronym stand for? And is there an easier way to say this? Let's break it down. Lesbian, a woman who is attracted to other women. Gay refers to a man who is attracted to other men. This term is also used for anyone who is attracted to another person with the same gender identity. Bisexual refers to a person who is attracted to both men and women. Transgender refers to a person whose gender identity, the sense of gender that every person feels inside, or gender expression is different from the sex that was assigned to them at birth. Queer, an umbrella term sometimes used to refer to a person whose attraction and/or identity goes beyond the traditional definitions associated with sexual orientation and gender identity. Different people use this term to mean different things. Questioning refers to a person who is questioning their sexual orientation or gender identity. Intersex refers to a person whose sexual anatomy or chromosomes do not fit with the traditional markers of female or male. Pansexual refers to a person who is sexually or emotionally attracted to people of any sex or gender identity. Two-spirit, a tradition in many First Nations that considers sexual minorities to have both male and female spirits. Asexual refers to a person who does not identify with any sexual orientation. Ally, a straight and cisgender person who supports equality for all. These words mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. You may come across acronyms that include different combinations of these terms, including LGBT, GLBT, LGBTQ, LGBTQIAAP, LGBTIQQ2SA, LGBTI, MSGI, GLBTA, GSD, quilt bag, and fab glitter. It's important to keep in mind that there is no consensus over which acronym to use. So if someone uses an acronym and you don't know what it means, don't be afraid to ask. Okay, so now that we are informed about what all those terms mean, is there an easier way to refer to the LGBTQIP2SAA community? I mean, it just took me at least one whole minute to say that acronym. Here at the True Colors Fund, we vary the terms we use, depending on the audience we are trying to reach. For the purposes of our online training materials, we have opted to use the term LGBT community, while also still recognizing that sexual orientation and gender identity are deeply complex.
All right, so now you see how I messed that up. It is a lot to remember. One that caught me when I saw Two-Spirit, because when I was researching for this show, that was the first time I heard the Two-Spirit, and I was just like, oh, well, one must be the Holy Ghost, because I didn't know, you know, or whatever. Like, okay, I don't even know what that is. So, Skylar, as you look at all of those different acronyms and names, what goes across your mind?
How immensely diverse the LGBT plus community is. How there's so many ways one can be a member of this community. There are countless sexual orientations and gender identities, and we will likely continue to learn more. I'm sure I don't even know all of them, and I've been out as a trans woman for over 5 years now. You know, one thing this video did a great job of was discussing the most common ones. One thing this video did a great job of was discussing the most common ones. and all the various acronyms. Personally, I tend to just say LGBT plus to keep it short and sweet, or the gay community. Gay, tends to be more of an umbrella term. But really, the importance of that plus is that anyone who falls anywhere along the rainbow is a welcome member of this community.
I agree. Jackie, so as a social worker, you're supposed to be inclusive and accepting and understanding all of those things. Within that field or occupation, what do you think needs to change? Because they're not ready. So we can pretend like, oh, okay, well, they're social workers and accepting and stuff, but that's not true. They're not ready. What advice would you give so that they can become ready and be inclusive and be accepting? What do you think needs to happen?
Excuse me. I think across the board, society just needs to change the culture norm of anybody who does not identify with either just female or just male, or is choosing to transition, or anywhere in between as far as sexual orientation goes. I think that a lot of policies need to be in place, a lot of healthcare policies and plans specifically for that community should be in place. Anti-discrimination bills is a big one. I think that there is a huge gap and a ton of room for us to grow as society and as social workers, even as individuals in general. There's a ton I still don't know about the community, and as a social worker, I am trying my best to continue to learn all of the terms and surgeries and hormones and everything that's going on, but there's still a lot of research that's needed yet. And as this has been a dilemma for many years now, it is still something that we can work towards. So I would say that is a good start.
I agree. And I don't know what it's going to take, because you brought up legislation briefly. And as a Black woman in America, my great-grandfather was a sharecropper. So that's how long ago my family stems back to fighting in this country for equality. And Black people are still fighting for equality and to be accepted. I speak for myself. I'm okay with being separate and equal. Keep me separate. I don't want to live anywhere or be around anybody that doesn't want to accept me anyway, because you think you posing a problem. I'm the problem. I'm going to be the neighbor from hell once I figure out that you hate me, right? So let's go. That's what it's going to be about, because I'm not going to tolerate that, right? But being equal is the part. I'm okay with being separate. I'm okay with knowing how you feel. I'm okay with if you're not okay with how I choose to live. But I still should not be treated differently in every single last thing I do with my life. There were 2 Asian people that were killed, I guess a couple of years ago. And in a week or 2, there was an anti-Asian hate bill signed. Like, oh, a couple got killed. We can't have that. And so a bill was signed. Look at how many trans people have gone through that. Look at how many Black people have gone through that and have been killed. And we don't have any legislation to say, no, don't hate them. No, don't kill them. No, don't treat them unfairly. And if you do any of that stuff, it's a crime. And I just really wish that would change, but it's going to take the elected officials that we vote for and put into these offices to make sure they really stand for what it is that we need. They all talk a good game when they're campaigning, but then it seems like once they get into office, some of those things don't manifest for a lot of reasons. And it's not always the division of the political parties. Just, I feel like they just blew smoke. And when the smoke clears, none of the stuff is happening that should happen. So when it comes to legislation, I think we have gotten some things that we want, but we have a long way to go. And I'm happy to have the trans community join within this movement, because it's going to take direct action from everyone. Direct action works. That's what makes things change. So when I hear people say all lives matter, clearly they don't. And there's representation right in this room of two groups who have to fight to matter in this country. So, as a result of that, we're going to move to another area where everyone should be accepted, and they aren't. Christianity, religion, Orthodox Judaism, and I could go on and on and on. There was a time where being trans was taboo and an abomination, where we have moved a little bit more towards acceptance with some of the groups. Skylar, can you speak to how you feel about that?
Absolutely. We see so much hatred stemming from religion, from people using religion to justify their bigoted beliefs. Like, oh, like I only feel this way because my God tells me to feel this way. That's absolutely not right. I feel blessed having been, so my parents are Christian, and when I was a freshman in high school, I got confirmed. I went to a surprisingly amazing church. My pastor was a lesbian woman herself. It actually made me feel welcome. That is absolutely not the case for so many LGBT plus people, that when they come out, they get kicked out of their churches. And that's traumatizing, to lose that safe space. I remember when I went to the Ferndale Pride Parade outside Detroit last year, many booths there were from local, welcoming, LGBT plus affirming churches. And I thought it was so amazing of them to be there. For them to be there for the people who didn't have a church to go to, for all the LGBT plus people that lost their churches. These friendly churches were there saying, we will welcome you. We will show you the love and respect that you deserve.
That is awesome. Awesome. I feel like that's how it should be. I don't feel like anyone should be ostracized within the confines of the church. Oftentimes there's this sweeping phrase, come as you are. You hear it quite often. But when you do, there are issues. And that shouldn't be. I've seen it where as a young girl would be singing in a choir or a praise dancer, and then if she happens to get pregnant, she has to sit down until the baby is born because she's ostracized. I don't like it. I also see when people who don't fit within the norm of the church, and so they come in and they may look a certain way. Maybe they have on a mini skirt, or someone in the church might think that their mini skirt is too short, or, you know, maybe that man wasn't raised that you take your hat off in church when you enter the building. I had someone share with me that they went to a program at a church a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of young fellas came in off of the street, but they did not remove their hats when they came in. And someone was getting ready to approach them to do so, and they stopped and like, hey, wait a minute. You know, that's old school. So as our elders are dying off from the church, if you want to keep this thing going, you're going to have to do something different. So you should be happy that this young brother came off the street in here, and you're about to approach him and tell him to take his hat off? For what? That has nothing to do with accepting Jesus Christ. He came in here for help, apparently. And he wanted to be a part of something great or grand that he has heard of, but yet and still you're going to criticize him and say, take your hat off. Well, you have to be careful these days, because these young guys, I wouldn't have wanted to say anything to them like, how you doing? Welcome. And sit down, because you don't know what frame of mind people are in. And I'm not going to blame gun violence and everything else on mental illness. That's a whole nother show within itself. But you still don't know the frame of mind that people are in. That young man could have been suicidal and said, you know what? I'm going to end it all. And was driving down the street and happened to see this church. And came in, mine is on the depression and everything else that he's going through. So he didn't remember. It doesn't mean his parents didn't teach him to take his hat off. He might have been feeling some type of way and was ready to end his life. And you focused on a hat? You don't know why he came into this church. And being a stranger, you should have welcomed him in with open arms. Being trans, you should welcome them in with open arms. Being black, you should welcome me in with open arms. You should be happy that someone outside of your little norm came in to your organization to try to seek the love of Jesus Christ. But see, that's what the problem becomes, because the Jesus Christ that I serve wasn't in four walls anyway. Everything miracle I heard him perform and read about started with a problem, and that problem didn't take place in the synagogue or in the church. He was among the people. The lady was at the well. She wasn't in the building. So we got it messed up. But let's look at this a little bit differently, because, you know, a lot of things, I know in the black community, we lean a lot on the church to solve a lot of things. Oh, we just gonna pray for you. And you just leave out with a greasy forehead and that's it, because nothing changes, right? Your real family is the one that wraps around you and loves you, teaches you right from wrong, guides you and support you. And when you can get the love of your parents and the support of your parents, it makes it seem like nothing in the world matters as much, because you have that peace and love that you want. So we're going to take a quick musical break, and when we come back, you are going to meet Skylar's parents, Cheryl and Dave, who love her and support her unconditionally, as a parent should. You have been listening to The Real Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, and we will be right back.
Yeah, God is good all day long, all day loving. He's the bomb, he gave the gift to make the song. He's always right and never wrong.
So we just listened to God is So Good by Trisha Duckworth. And he truly is, if we follow his love and guidance and principles as they were outlined and leave religiosity out of it, we would do just fine. As I indicated, we were going to bring on Cheryl and Dave, Skylar's parents. And on the break, I was telling them that I love, honor, salute, and respect them as parents for embracing their child. They didn't throw her out of the house. They didn't condemn her or anything like that. And these are Christians who are parents that love their child. So without further ado, we're going to introduce you to Cheryl and Dave. Say hello to everyone that's listening.
Hello, everybody.
Yep, hello. Thank you for having us.
Might they be muted?
Nope. So maybe we need to go to a quick musical break while we get this under control, because I cannot hear them. So we're going to put on just a quick song and see why we're having this technical difficulty. You're listening to The Real Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, and we'll be right back.
He's good, he's so good. What, you thought it was over? Not yet. First, I want to thank God for all that he has and is allowing in my life, and all of our lives for that matter. You know, I tell you what, it's only by his grace, and I'm telling you, I'm super grateful. Then I want to thank our sponsors, Valerie Kelly Bonner, Nina Williams, Jennifer.
Okay, see there, when we get to talking good stuff, Christian people be like, yeah, that's the devil. That wasn't the devil. The damn cord was loose. So don't even get me started on that. But anyway, we are going to welcome Cheryl and Dave, Skylar's parents. How are you?
We're great. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. And as I indicated while we were on the break, if I had parents that understood me fully as you understand your daughter, I would be so much further along in my life. I had to overcome a lot of trauma as an adult because of who I was, this talkative, inquisitive child. I was always told, you ask too many questions, you talk too much, you're this, you're that. And so it just put me into this shell that I'm now out of. But it took a while to get there. I'm almost 60 years old now. It took a while to get there. So let's talk a little bit about your beautiful daughter, Skylar. When Skylar was growing up, as she indicated, like, oh, I played lacrosse and football. I hated all of that stuff. When were the first signs that you saw? Did you see any signs that Skylar was uncomfortable in her body and preferred to be female?
Well, I'd first start off that we, Skylar being born male, we had 3 boys. And I could always tell Skylar was a little bit different. She was very calm and very sweet as a baby, as opposed to the boys who were very rambunctious. And Skylar also just was so loving. Well, they were all loving, but she had a certain quietness and peacefulness about her that was very different than the other 2. And then when we moved houses, we moved into an existing home that had a girl, and Skylar wanted to be in the girls' room with all the flowers and all the, female colors. And we were a little surprised by that. And we said, oh, we can change that wallpaper and put in trucks and stuff. And she was like, no, I want the flowers. I want that color. But we never knew, because she never did come out and express until she was older, that she was transgender. So, and I
Oh my God. So we just had another technical difficulty, and so we have lost Cheryl and Dave and our engineer. So what I'm going to do is try to locate where this issue is coming from. I apologize. And we are going to let Skylar give a little bit more dialogue about what her mother was saying. Do you remember the wallpaper in that room?
I do, and I remember expressing a desire to be in that room. I also remember the first time I came out to my parents, you know, when that first like pseudo coming out story when I was 18. You know, my parents are amazing people. They're so kind and welcoming. They're the type of parents when I'd have friends over, my mom might have bought us cookies or baked us cookies or bought us pizza. And like, you know, like across the street, our neighbors were a lesbian couple, and my parents were great, to this day are great friends with them. So I knew they would accept me. And it still took so much courage to come out. Like, I remember when I was 18, I was like, okay, like I'm going to do it. I'm going to come out tomorrow. I did not sleep at all that night. I went the whole night without sleeping. I woke up. Sorry, I didn't wake up. I got out of bed and was like, okay, like I'm going to do this. And I remember my dad saying like, yeah, like I will love you unconditionally, and how much that meant. And still, about a month later, I was like, I can't do this. I can't transition. And went back in the closet. And then years later was when I finally truly came out, stuck with it, and began my transition.
Wow. You know, that was interesting. Did you know, because your mom was like, hey, she saw the room with the flower wallpaper and was like, nope, just leave it just like it is. So that was amazing. What color was it, the room?
You know, I was so young, I hardly remember, but I do remember it was white and pink, and there were different flowers, and I really liked it. It was almost like it enabled me to tap into my femininity without like purposely expressing it. I didn't have to like say like, oh, like I really want a girly room, because that girly room was already there. It was much easier to say like, I want this room than, hey, like I want to like paint my room girly. I want to put up girly posters. It made it easier, and I was grateful for that. I remember, you know, Dwayne Wade has a transgender daughter, and Dwayne Wade has talked about how with his chef, his personal chef, he struggled for years to tell this chef that he does not like cilantro on his burgers. His chef kept making burgers with cilantro on them. And he really struggled to tell him that. And yet here his daughter, like I think around the age of 10, had the courage to tell him that she's transgender. And so like here Dwayne is struggling to inform his chef that he doesn't like cilantro. And yet his daughter has the courage to tell him, her father, that she is not a boy, that she is a trans girl.
And, you know, they took a lot of heat for allowing, even from her mother, for allowing that change to take place.
Yeah, and it's not even a change that they're allowing, because, like, you know, the suicide statistic I shared earlier, 40% of trans people attempt suicide. When parents don't accept their child, that suicide rate skyrockets to over 55%. That's over 50%. So, like, what would a parent rather have? A trans child or a dead child? And this really attests to the importance of transition. It is not a choice. It is who people are, and is what people have to do in order to be healthy and happy.
I agree. Well, thank you for that. We're going to go to another musical break and see what we need to do to get Cheryl and Dave back on. Thank you for your patience. You're listening to The Real Black Coffee, and we'll be back.
He woke me up this morning. My heart is beating and I'm breathing and I feel so alive. I got everything I need. A home to live in, a bed to sleep in, and food in the fridge. Yeah, yeah. God is so good, He's good, He's so good. God is so good, He's good, He's so good. God is so good, He's good, He's so good. He's so good, He's good, He's so good. God is so good, He's good, He's so good. God is so good.
Okay, Cheryl and Dave, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you. I'm so sorry about that technical difficulty. Technology, we can't live without it, but today, can't live with it. So we're going to go back to the room. And she was okay and comfortable being in that room, and then later on, she came out. So that was the signs. Now, I'm sure there were a lot of people that didn't agree with Skylar's transition. And some of them might have had the nerve to vocalize that to you. How did you handle that opposition?
Well, that's an interesting question because honestly, we were in a very fortunate area and neighborhood, and I was very concerned of a lot of people not accepting it. Because prior to Skylar coming out, I had heard comments, from people about Caitlyn Jenner and her transition and jokes about it and everything. And so I was very concerned to come, telling certain friends and certain people. And I did tell them, though, and unbelievably, they were completely supportive and just, I think a lot of people, said, that really makes sense. They could see signs, and they just were so happy that she had the courage to come out and be who she really is.
Yeah, and I'd like to second that. I have not received any negative comments or negative feedback from any of our friends, which I think is testimony to the loving and accepting community that we lived in both Connecticut and in Michigan, and also in our church, which was a very, very accepting church.
And that's awesome because I have seen so many people shunned and ostracized. I had a brother who is deceased now, but he had HIV, schizophrenia, and a crack addiction. And my father is a pastor, and the way that the individuals treated him was reprehensible. So to hear that the love of Christ really does exist and exudes the way that it's supposed to in that institution is amazing, and what a tremendous blessing and testimony of that. What are holidays like at your house? You say you have 2 sons and Skylar. What are holidays like at your house with your family?
They're wonderful. They're my favorite time of the year when we can all get together because our other 2 sons live in different states. So I always try to bring everybody together. And extended family has been super supportive, and they're fantastic.
Yeah, and I would certainly agree with that. Our holidays are one heck of a lot of fun, a lot of time in the kitchen, a lot of time at the kitchen table.
And I would say a lot of times Skylar performing for us, too. She's a beautiful music player on the piano, and we love to hear her play.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I wish I knew that. I would have had her send some music to me so we can hear. That is amazing. And, there are a lot of people who I have heard various things about parenting. It stemmed from adoption. If we see a white family that adopted a black baby, like, look at that baby's hair. They don't even know how to comb the baby's hair. They're not going to be able to teach them culture, and they're not going to be able to do this and that. And the list could go on. When it comes to LGBTQ parenting, like more recently, the brat and her wife have, I think, did in vitro fertilization, and the brat is carrying the baby, and they picked either a white male for the embryo. People just went nuts. Like, I wish people would stop minding other people's business. This would be a much better world to live in. But when we think about parenting and your parenting style, it seems like that's what parenting is. It doesn't matter. The child just needs love. Now, there are some cultural competencies that every child needs, whether they get it through growing up and experiencing some things, or they get it from being at home. Like you said, the holidays are good. We get around and we sing, and she plays the piano and stuff. That's all culture, and that's all learning how to feel inclusive and get along in your family. So what do you have to say to people who have a child that is transitioning or have come out, and they want to throw their child out on the street? Dave and Cheryl, please say something to them, and let's go with Cheryl first.
I would say educate yourself. I think a lot of the fear stems from not knowing. And, educate yourself. Buy books that tell the stories, and talk to professionals, that might be able to help you understand. That's, and I have learned so much from Skylar, and just about her community and different friends that she's brought home and introduced us to. And the world is a beautiful place, and we are all so different. And how can you put your child in a box, and expect them to stay there? You have to embrace who they are and love them unconditionally. That is why you wanted children to begin with. You wanted to be able to share the love and beauty of this world.
Wow. You're absolutely right, and that was so eloquently stated. Dave, as a father, what do you have to say to those parents or the dads out there to say, hey, I had a son, not a daughter, and I'm not going to allow this behavior? They even throw their child out on the street. What can you say to those fathers?
I would certainly say that it starts with unconditional love, and loving and accepting your child for who they are under any circumstance. Cheryl's right about educating yourself. It wasn't easy for us as parents, but we took the approach that we wanted to do everything we could to help and support Skylar. I do remember a therapist telling me, don't try to understand it, just try to be as helpful and supportive and loving as you possibly can. And Skylar, I have to say, made this perhaps easy for us, so to speak, because Skylar has been a force for good. And what I mean by that is, Skylar's very smart, very well educated at both Boston University and the University of Michigan, and she wants to pursue a career in therapy to help people, to help all people. And when I talk about an individual being a force for good, a lot of people will stand up and say, we should do this and we should do that. In Skylar's case, she's literally dedicating her life and her education to helping others. She's a very noble cause, and I'm incredibly proud of her for that.
Yes. And when she came strutting in this studio, I'm like, okay.
I'm blushing.
Very well dressed and strutted in and had herself together, looking so beautiful. From the inside out, her personality, we spoke over the phone over the weekend, and I'm big on energy, and her personality was just amazing. I felt so good after I had the conversation, and I was hoping that she felt the same, because I definitely did not want her coming into this space feeling uncomfortable. So I'm hoping that she is comfortable and that she is okay, because there are a lot of people who I want to listen to this replay so they can get some education and understanding. And one thing you said for sure, Dave, is this: unconditional love. If your son murdered somebody and went to prison, would you throw him out, or would you still go and visit them and show them love and show them understanding? And there's so many other things that children may do, but you don't stop loving them. They're still your child. And that is what you have displayed. It's almost like if you could write a book, you have a bestseller on your hands. Just basically, and I'm not being facetious, like with what Skylar has done, and the way that you're supporting, and the way that your community has supported, and the way that your church has supported, it's unprecedented. That is not the norm across this United States when we're dealing with members of that community. There are so many hate crimes. So let's get into that a little bit, because Cheryl and Dave, I know you had to be a little bit nervous. So, okay, you're accepting it in your home and the church was accepting whatever, but it's some people in this world that are just full of hate. I've experienced it as being a black woman. I fear, I'm raising my great nephew that's 10 years old. I fear for him to be driving while black or anything else when he grows up as a result of some of the things that happen in this world. How do you handle the anxiety and the fear associated with the hate crimes and all of the other things that people do in this world against the trans community?
Well, it certainly weighs heavy on our mind. Hold on one second.
I can say something. My parents are both amazingly supportive and love me so much, and they express that. One thing they've done to actively show that is my father has purchased pepper spray for me. And so now, whenever I'm walking around, I have it in my purse.
That's good. That's really good. I thought you were going to say a gun. I'm like, all right, Papa. But that could be next. I exercise my rights. You see me. I'm always ready. I'm like the ever ready battery. So, you know, but that's good. You do have to learn how to protect yourself. And that was a wonderful thing, because you have to prepare your child for this world.
And Valerie, I mean, like yourself, I never will be non-fearful of, Skylar in this world that we're living in. I think about it all the time. However, we have to take each day as it comes and just pray and hope that she will always be safe. And, and she's very smart, and she educates herself on areas where she can go and feel that she will be accepted. And try to avoid the areas where, we know that people would not accept her. So.
Well, one thing for sure, she transitioned so beautifully. Like, she's just so pretty and carries herself very well. I salute and respect you as parents. You have done a wonderful job with your daughter, just so down to earth and just amazing. I'm just honored to have her here today and to have you here today to talk openly. It's a lot of parents who wouldn't be able to have this conversation. And you seem very comfortable and very supportive.
And we are. We're very comfortable. We're very supportive. But really, when I look back over the years, all the credit goes to Skylar. She is always taken really good care of herself, and really all the credit goes to Skylar, because this has been her journey, and it's been a very difficult journey, but she has handled it extremely well.
And as Skylar said earlier on the show, how she went through a time where she was really depressed, and that was so scary to see her that way. And after she transitioned and how she changed and was so happy, and she, was a completely different person in her mood and her spirits. And, it really is something to allow a person to be who they want to be.
Yes, that's amazing. Well, we're going to prepare to go to a musical break, but I would want to thank you so much for participating in that segment with us, Cheryl and Dave. I do think you have a book in you to talk about how to love unconditionally, because most people's love comes with conditions. We use that word unconditionally very loosely, but a lot of people's love has conditions, because as soon as you do something, you will know. And that love is not shown, that grace is not shown. And so I just salute and respect you for being so supportive of your beautiful daughter. And I thank you for the time that you have spent on the show. And stay tuned. We're going to still do another segment after this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You have been listening to The Real Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream. And we're going to go into a quick musical break. And we'll be right back. So you have been listening to The Real Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream. The title of this show is All Lives Don't Matter Until Trans Lives Matter. And I have Skylar Hawthorne here with me. We just got done talking to her wonderful parents who are so loving, supportive, and understanding. Wow. How much farther along would I be if I just had that type of understanding and love and support? And I'm not dragging my mama. It wasn't like she was the worst, but I'm just saying, You know, that type of love and support, that really shows unconditional love. But there was a journey that Skylar went on to transition. So let's go through that journey with you, Skylar. So you decided, you came out to your parents, you decided you were going to transition to female. Take us on that journey.
Yeah, really, I realized I had to transition, otherwise I would continue being depressed. That it was necessary for my own happiness. And thankfully, my parents were supportive. I remember my mom took me out shopping. I'm so grateful for that. And there's research that attests to this. Cornell looked at every single study on this, identified 79 scholarly articles about the well-being of children with supportive or unsupportive parents, and found that overwhelmingly it is a major moderating factor. And I also remember my mom helping me a little bit with makeup. Coming out was very intimidating at first because there's so much that goes into being a woman, and so much that I had missed out on, that I wasn't taught, that I had to learn. And my mom was right there to help me learn. And so are my aunts. They're both amazing, Aunt Pam and Aunt Debbie. So for me personally, you know, there's 1,000 ways to transition. There are many identities. I am a binary transgender woman in the sense that I just identify as a woman. And so for me, I started my transition with HRT, hormone replacement therapy, with estrogen and an anti-testosterone. I remember showing up at that doctor's office and being like, I know I don't look like a girl, I don't sound like a girl, I don't act like a girl, but I am a girl, please believe me. Thankfully, they did. They gave me a list of every single possible effect, every single possible side effect. I initialed next to each one. And within a month, I had that prescription. And still, I didn't really have the courage to start presenting as a woman, to start living my life as a woman. I really let the effects of estrogen take their time, which overall take about 2 years. You know, that's like body fat redistribution. I lost a lot of muscle over those 2 years. And after about a year, roughly a year, I felt like I started to somewhat look more like a woman than a man. At this point, my hair had been a bit longer around my shoulders. I've been blessed to have naturally blonde, straight hair, which is stereotypically feminine. And that helped me pass. And then, so the more I naturally looked like a woman, thanks to estrogen, the more comfortable I felt presenting as a woman. And this dress I wore here to the studio was actually deliberate. It was the first dress I ever bought. It was one of the first dresses I ever wore outside. And so it really holds a soft spot in my heart. Also around the 1 year mark is when I first started taking voice feminization classes. I was at Boston University, and Boston has the highest concentration of colleges in the country. Nearby was Emerson College, a very LGBT plus friendly college, and also with a top-notch speech pathology program. I was able to take classes there with current graduate students, and with a few other trans girls also in the class. It was just $20 per hour, whereas other speech feminization classes can be much more expensive. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was the most effective courses, being graduate students in a group setting, but it was definitely better than nothing. And after about, I want to say 5-6 months of really practicing my voice a lot, I started to get the hang of it. It's not perfect. I can't really yell like a woman, but I am very grateful for my voice. I will say that, that is my own personal transition story. At the age of 21, after puberty, I want to talk a little bit about the wave of anti-trans legislation sweeping the country, most of which is targeting gender-affirming care, which we know saves lives. The vast majority of people who come out as trans ultimately transition and are in fact trans, and yet we have too many states trying to ban the ability for people to do so. Gratefully, earlier in the show, we learned that Massachusetts was the first state to legalize gay marriage. So in that state, I did not have that hard of a time getting a prescription for estrogen. But now in many states, that is really difficult. And I think back, like, to going through puberty and how awful it felt for my voice to drop, for me to get bigger, my shoulders broaden, to be taller. It made me feel disgusting because that was not who I was. And if I had been able to start HRT sooner, my voice would never have dropped. I wouldn't be 5'10". It really would have been even more life-saving. Yeah, so I guess one misguided motivation behind this anti-trans legislation is that, like, you can't know that you're actually trans at a younger age. That's false. Our sense of gender identity forms around the age of 3. Take it from somebody who's starting to be a psychotherapist. That is true. And you know, puberty starts around, what, the age of like 10, 12, roughly? People have a sense of gender identity at that age. They can make an informed decision. Yeah, you know, the goal of the trans community isn't to turn any kid trans. It's to turn trans kids into adults. We are not trying to bombard society with LGBT plus norms. We're just trying to get it to become accepted.
Yeah, that's real. That's real because, like I said, saying Black Lives Matter is no more divisive, and saying all lives matter is not going to unify us, right? There's no unity in that. We're not going to unite just because we say all lives matter, just like we're not going to be more divisive if we say Black Lives Matter. So it's just a matter of everyone being accepted and feeling belonging for who they are and how they want to live their life.
Absolutely.
And that's it. And if you don't like how someone's living their life or the choices they make, stay away from them. Simple. But to go the extra mile with all of the hatred and all of the other things that go on and people are just pure evil, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. So as we prepare to close, Jacqueline, any parting remarks? First of all, thank you for connecting me with the Skylar. I'm so happy. I feel like I've made a new friend. It's just been wonderful. I appreciated the conversation we had over the weekend, and even more so this conversation that we're having this evening. Is it anything that you would like to say to the audience before we leave?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as a social worker, having this open and honest and real conversation, that it is very important to continue to educate yourselves. You only got a very minor glimpse of the things that we talked about as far as policies and legalizations and stuff within counties, healthcare. All of the state guidelines are kind of different depending on where you go, what you're looking for. So just make sure that you're staying up to date and current in all of the research that you're doing and all of the things that you are looking into, to making sure that you're staying informed or just kind of in the loop, I guess. I would say that listening is a very great first step, even if it's not your first step, but continuing education is always something that I'm very passionate about. So
thank you, Jackie. And you're right, education is key, because when my brother was going through being diagnosed with HIV, and this was more than 30 years ago. So, you know, then HIV was like COVID was 2 years ago. Everybody's scared and nobody understands what's going on. And my father, in order for him to deal with my brother's schizophrenia, his HIV, and his crack addiction, he had to educate himself. And that changed the trajectory of their relationship moving forward. So education
Absolutely.
is key. You want to be able to make informed decisions about those things. Skylar, what would you like our audience to know? How would you like to close out this show and this conversation?
I'd like to continue on this topic of continued education because it's so important. And it shouldn't necessarily have to come from going out and seeking that information. Like, it shouldn't have to come from like reading books about the LGBT plus community or looking at YouTube videos about it. Like, hopefully it becomes more normalized because about 1 in every 200 people are transgender. A much higher rate of the general population is LGBT, and yet we don't have that representation. Like, I know of just one actress who kind of sort of looks like me, who's a white blonde trans girl. That's Hunter Schafer. She's in that show Euphoria. She has a minor role in an upcoming movie. I'm really excited for that. You know, so much less than 1 in 200 actors are trans women. I hope it becomes a lot more normalized because representation is so important. I know people who had no idea you could even be transgender until Caitlyn Jenner came out and made headlines. As controversial as she is, that overall was a good thing. That was good representation. You know, going back to the history of trans representation in the media, you know, Silence of the Lambs, that villain was a trans woman. I think it was Psycho, that infamous shower scene. That was a trans woman that they portrayed in that. It was really bad representation that conveyed this idea that trans people are evil psycho killers. That is not the case. We are human. We just want to be ourselves. We have to be ourselves. I am really grateful for this platform right here, right now, where I have the opportunity to share my story, to help normalize the trans experience, to help advocate for my community. I have dedicated my life to making the world a better place for trans people than it was for me. And this experience has helped me achieve that goal. Thank you.
I am honored. I don't take anyone that I have on this show for granted. I appreciate you. I've learned some things. I didn't know a lot. I know I messed up the acronyms a lot, you know, but being accepting and loving, I accept people for who they are, and then I place them accordingly, right? And I just feel like that's what everybody should do. Let people live the way that they want to live. You're not going to let anybody come in your house and tell you how your house should be and how you should live and what you want to do. So stop trying to tell other people what they're supposed to do. I was born with black skin and I love it. I can't help it if people have a problem with that. That's your problem, not mine. Keep it to yourself so it won't become a bigger issue, because it doesn't have to be. It's not your business. And that's what I have to say. Skylar's parents said it best. They wrapped around their child with love. It wasn't the easiest process, but they couldn't imagine sending her out into this world that's filled with hate in other places, because their community was very accepting. But just to know, and they were very honest, they still think about the fact that there's so much hatred in this world that someone who's that ignorant could potentially try to do something to their child, but they still love and embrace her. So with that, for anyone involved in the desecration of the mural in Ypsilanti and you scratched out the black and you put all lives matter, you can scratch that out too. Because all lives do not matter until black lives matter, until indigenous people's lives matter, and until trans lives matter. That is the end of our show. Thank you for listening to The Real Black Coffee, No Sugar, No Cream, where I don't try to spill the tea or make you feel dazed like you drank a shot of cheap liquor. I just try to articulate very strong, factual, statements that have you look at things from a different perspective. And tonight that was Skylar's perspective. I will be out of town next week, but I will catch you the week after. Take it easy, and so long.